old, and it's all
A
lost.
material.
It's
we
all
wasted
lost
our
to
A
time.
material.
Yeah,
wrong with you
all the
guys?
best stuff. Well,
It'll
that's
be
over
lost to the ages, lost in time, like tears and rain.
the mists of time.
Time
But
to die.
yeah, for now, we just want to do a stream, just so it's like, let's do a stream. We planned it a week in advance at least, but you want to have Doug on to visit, at least to visit for a little bit. Doug is having his crazy NFTs that are making
We really are
trillions, more billions of dollars.
More billions, but we had to invent a new number because of Morbius.
But yeah, he's making more money than the movie Morbius, which has made the most money in history.
It sold a more billion tickets.
Yes. And also,
But yeah, we really are the biggest troublemakers in comics right now.
We're the last two left.
You guys.
Yeah, we're the most dangerous. We're the biggest. We strike the most fear into the hearts of comics creators.
Apparently, we've killed people
pretty much ever.
Comics.
But let's face it, it's quantity. I mean, it's quality over quantity because you don't have the numbers to be a real threat.
It's sort of almost mutually exclusive. Is that the biggest numbers are always going to go towards the comics that either will not necessarily even have the most quantity, but have sort of the most pandering or the most. Not that we were even here to talk about that, but the thing is that, the one thing about Common America is that it really broke out because the quality was so consistent. And it was a lot of quality, and it was very consistent.
In particular, it's kind of like mixing, when you have like a good art and it's like a good cost. It's like quality plus quantity. It's usually always the sweet spot.
The magic trifecta was good art and releases on time and doesn't cost a lot. And
it just seems weird that wasn't that how comics were for most of their existence. They came out monthly, every month for years on end, and they were cheap impulse buys next to the candy bars at the grocery store, and then you never questioned it. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, you guys get your books out in schedule, 3 whole volumes a year, and the quality is good and they're cheap. I'm like, isn't this the way it's supposed to be?
Well, it's not all of a sudden. It was Image that changed everything. That changed
right.
Image.
Yeah, once comics became like collectible boutique items, that really is kind of what ruined the medium.
Celebrity ruined the medium.
It
was a bunch of celebrities.
Fame seeking,
And it makes me feel bad because I've known a lot of our local comic shop guys back when I lived in Virginia and here living in Arkansas, and they're all great guys. They all run great businesses. But I also the comic shops are like an anachronism now, like video game arcades. I had a lot of fun at video game arcades as a kid, but consoles caught up to them. PC gaming caught up to them. We don't need them anymore. They're an anachronism. Some of them still exist out there. A friend of ours owns a bit bar, and he's managed to, turn that nostalgia into like a cool spot in his city. But comic shops are heading in that direction too. And we still put our books out direct market through Antarctic Press. But it's like we don't know how much longer that's going to last. So we put a lot of our focus on online sales. That's just the way it is. We don't want to be a Blockbuster Video.
I mean, arcades are actually a really great example of that because that was when the 90s, the 80s and the 90s. We were the exact market for that. We didn't buy comics. We never bothered with comics.
We didn't even play at arcades necessarily.
Yeah, we couldn't go to arcades because they weren't common enough and they were too expensive.
Yeah. Or they were designed to drip feed you of quarters, basically. And then they would charge 2 quarters. It's like, 2 quarters for the same
right? For House of the Dead? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So comic shops, do they ever come back? It's not going to come back, right? It will trickle down and it'll remain
Maybe
for a hobbyist. It's a hobbyist thing.
Don't expect them to.
Well, I've noticed that the ones that have been surviving, at least in the towns that I've been to, is that they've diversified beyond comics. Now, comics used to be 100% of their inventory. Now it's like 25%, and the other 75% are toys, and RPGs are a big thing, like tabletop gaming and board games and stuff like that. And they host like Magic the Gathering tournaments and collectibles.
So they turned into something social, because comics used to be antisocial. You'd go to the 7-Eleven, you'd buy one and go, and now
And now they're antisocial, but they have the pretense of social. So you have to deal with comic book people who are just so intolerable to be around.
That's one thing I heard recently. It was like Forge made another tweet about trying to find the Incal at his local comic store. They're like, we don't carry that small press stuff that doesn't sell. And he's like, I was about to buy it. It's gonna sell.
It doesn't.
At least
it doesn't. It doesn't sell. You have to have a huge comic book store to carry a broad. The store is carried by the big two.
Well, that's why they diversified too. Is that
they're not even carried by the big two at this point. Nobody's reading even the big two.
Right.
Nobody even cares about Marvel or DC.
Yeah, it's a niche of a niche.
At the best, they care about Image because of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I was told that if you didn't like superhero cape shit, then you don't like comics in general. What's the biggest American comic, though? Isn't it The Walking Dead?
Yeah. Well, you have to have some sort of media outside comics to get normies or just people to notice your book exists. Like Invincible has that. Is it on Netflix, the animated series? And so Invincible is like...
no, that's on Amazon.
Amazon, okay. Yeah. So people are noticing Invincible now. It's been around for so long. It's got like 10 phone books worth of content. But
it
now
wrapped
it has a
before
cartoon.
they animated it. I know Ryan Otley, the artist on the Invincible.
But it took an Amazon animated series. Yeah.
They were able to keep the art style consistent. So when you watch the show, you go and look at the comic, and the comic's it looks the same. So it's easy for somebody to make that jump from the show right into the comic. Walking Dead, slightly more difficult, but that still works.
I still don't see Invincibles though show up anywhere on my feed. I don't see pop culture talking.
Well, yeah, after that first season came out, it blew up big, and then it sort of went back away. And probably when the second season comes out, it'll have a resurgence.
A lot of people don't like Amber. That is one thing. I actually read a bunch of Invincible because of the cartoon show. And it was like one of the things I remember people talking about. I was like, they changed the character of Amber. They made her the most annoying bitch.
Yeah.
That was just bad casting.
Well,
I think the writing also was a huge factor of that.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Casting was just voice acting, really.
What's funny about Invincible is that almost coincidentally, if you will, is that my favorite characters in the entire show were actually the twins, or rather the guy who kept cloning himself, and he wouldn't even... neither one of them would admit that the other, or that they were the clone, or that the other was the original, or whatever.
That's like when you and Patrick switch places and you don't tell us.
In order to commit criminal fraud, but
we're both the evil twin in that case.
But they have a really interesting character arc with a couple side characters and stuff, and I thought that was the best part of the show. That's maybe if the show was just about these guys and not Invincible.
Yeah, spin-off.
Yeah, exactly.
All that stuff was good, actually. That's one of the strengths of the actual comic, if they ever start making it, is they add layers to all the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something I wasn't expecting, in fact. That was nice to see in the show. But,
Ryan Otley's art is some of the best I've seen in comics.
Yeah, it's really good.
Number one.
That's how superheroes should look, is generally sort of cartoonish and a bit exaggerated and stylized, without looking, like full-on Cal Arts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not that to be honest, the whole complaint about Cal Arts, and we were one of the first people to ever do a video about Cal Arts, which got a lot of people pissed off, but that was on a previous video that just doesn't exist anymore. But the thing is, now I kind of don't care about the Cal Art style. I'm not going to watch it anyways, but
it's just a zeitgeist that went through design, Mark.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. It's like everybody's copying each other's homework, and eventually that stops and we move on to something else. It's kind of like, for a while, every big hulking CG movie monster looked like the cave troll from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I
see that all the time.
And, Abomination looked like that, and now they don't anymore. But for a little while, that was a thing to do. But it goes away.
Doomsday even kind of.
Yeah.
And that stuff with the style, how even the Cal Arts style, the jelly bean mouth or whatever they call it, a lot of that's kind of faded away already now. So it's like it doesn't matter, it doesn't exist. It never happened, if you will.
Yeah, it hit its I think it hit its peak disgust with that Thundercat show that was like dead in the water when it was released, and kind of everybody stopped caring after that. But the problem with that was that everybody called anything stylized and simplified as Cal Arts. So it's one of those things like calling someone a Nazi when you don't like him. It loses its meaning when you
They
call
had
it
it in that Red Panda Bear movie, though. That's the most recent one. Maybe they put it in there early and it took a long time to come out.
Yeah, I just saw the ER review of that. That movie looks genuinely creepy, though.
It's pretty creepy. Good performances, though. I look at the animation in it, and there's some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's actually what you're always looking at. That's what I hate the most, is that the animation's actually very expressive.
Yeah, it makes me think, how much of this work could have been spent on something better.
And it feels like pandering to China, because it's another ancestral worship. We have to get this magic amulet.
But it's also like a middle finger to all of our ancestors.
Yeah.
They'll probably show it in China and be like, look how stupid Americans are. Americans are evil again. Americans are being evil again.
Yeah.
Can we just do movies where we ignore China again?
What happened? I know, right? Yeah. All those Raya and the Last Dragons and Mulan remakes and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, and you bring up a good point. There are some movies where the animation looks so good, but the plot and characters look so bad. It's like there's this movie that I saw the trailer for, and I went to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It was for this movie called The Bad Guys, and the animation in it looks so good. It's like a CG animation, but it's made to look like a 2D kind of animation. The characters are really emotive and expressive, but the plot just seems dumb, and all the jokes that they plucked out for the trailer were all just like stupid Shrek tier DreamWorks crap. It's like, man, it's
DreamWorks. It's DreamWorks, right?
Yeah, it's DreamWorks. God, yeah.
They're making the DreamWorks face. That was another meme that was going around back then. Was the DreamWorks face.
The animation in The Bad Guys looks like an evolution from that Disney short Paperman, where they're using CG assets to create a cel shaded kind of look. But they've come a long way since then, and it looks visually really appealing, but nothing about the substance of it beyond the aesthetic looked appealing. And I'm like, do I want to go see this just for the visuals when everything else in the trailer annoyed the crap out of me?
Although the trailer can be really misrepresenting too. Usually I've seen movies where it's like, oh, the trailer, the jokes in there, you're crap. And then I see the full movie and it's like, oh, they put the worst parts of the entire movie into the trailer, and the other stuff in the movie is actually good.
That happens. I feel like though the ratio to that is like 1 in 100. Usually, like when they put the crap in the trailer, that's the best stuff, and the rest in the actual movie is just utter garbage.
Well,
it's very rare you get a movie that's better than the trailer, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah, it's kind of insane how like you can't even bank on that anymore, because they have the trailer houses that just take the movie, cut it into a trailer, and so they're essentially making a whole different movie on their own. It's a different production company makes a different movie out of the currently previously existing movie that's not even out yet.
It's an art form in and of itself. One of my buddies, Brian Battles, is a trailer director, so he does that work. They heap a bunch of footage on him. He does the effects for him and everything. I have another buddy that scores trailer. He just does music for trailers. That's his whole job.
Yeah, they like trailers even have to have that sort of 3-act, a really, really tiny version of the 3-act structure with like the second act slump and then the rising action.
That just gives away the whole plot of the movie sometimes. I mean, there are good ones and bad ones, but trailers, they've fallen into some sort of weird formula where you can always like set your watch by how the trailer is going to be like built. Like it's going to have like these flashes, and you'll hear like a heartbeat and like
it cuts to black. The first act of the trailer or the prelude to the trailer has like cuts to black with like really low silent music or something.
Do people even go to movies anymore? That's what I want to know. I don't know. I can't even think of what I want.
Some people, I mean, some people went to see Sonic the Hedgehog. I went out to see
Sonic the Hedgehog. But I think the last movie I saw in theaters was Godzilla vs. Kong. I go out maybe once a year now.
That was a while ago, yeah.
I saw Spider-Man and I saw Uncharted were the two that I saw. I like Spider-Man a lot. I didn't like Uncharted.
I liked the new Spider-Man movie because then it was just like, let's just go ridiculous with it. Throw everyone in it. They're all complaining at each other. And also it was like Spider-Man is dedicated to helping the villains, and it's like, well, shit, I've never seen that before.
He's their therapist.
Yeah,
the Spider-Man therapist.
It's an inspirational superhero who's genuinely good and kind-hearted, and not some, I don't know, like
some
anti-hero who is like, should I save them or should I kill them? He doesn't even have for a second. He doesn't have that sort of dilemma. He's like, I'm Spider-Man to help people.
Just like a character who just wants to. He just allows the world to be taken over by a hostile swarm of aliens. And he's like, I don't care.
Who don't have any motivation. Like just a big hostile swarm of aliens that don't even have any motivation. Why are they taking over the world? Just because they want to. Okay. I mean, that's the other thing is that in the Spider-Man movie, they go over, at least most of the villains, driven crazy or something, but they had a reason for being bad guys. They had some reason. And it's like, that's kind of what the main focus on having villains is. And most of the Marvel movies do that, at least, even if the villains are bland. It's like they're doing this for this reason, even if it's a stupid reason or just usually selfish reason. That's why
they're all victims of circumstance.
Yeah,
and I like that they pointed that out in the movie. They all have these like tragic origins, like, oh, if I didn't have that quote unquote one bad day, I'd be a normal dude or whatever. And then like Sandman is just there. It's like, hey, I already redeemed myself at the end of Spider-Man 3. I really shouldn't be here, guys.
But he's going to punch
the only celebrity they could get back for this movie. So
he wants to sand punch and all that stuff. It's weird because he's the one guy who's mostly the most CG.
I was actually also thinking that because I brought this up, we were talking about this, and it's like, who's actually a villainous character? I was thinking about that chart of like a good villain.
The villain tier.
Yeah, the tier of
tier stuff.
Yeah, it's like the best kind. It's like somebody whose motivations you actually agree with.
Or that you appreciate, that you sympathize with more than the actual protagonist or the hero.
And then it's like then the lowest tier is just seems to be insane or evil for evil's sake.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I think
those are my favorites. Those are my favorites.
I was just talking about
Dr. Dooms.
I was just talking about who's the guy from RoboCop?
Clarence Boddicker. Yeah. That guy's a good example of evil for evil's sake, but he's still motivated essentially by greed.
And Time Bandits has like the literal devil like wrapped in plastic. He's one of my favorite villains. He's dark and scary and amazing.
I mean,
that can work. There's examples where that can work.
Yeah. I mean, so you have a rogues gallery in your story. There's a room for all kinds of villains. You can have your Mum-Ras and your Shredders and your Skeletors, and then you can also have your sympathetic villains, and then you can have your misguided villains that you can sympathize with, those kinds of things.
Freeze.
But yeah, your Mr. Freeze. Then you can have your crazy Joker, like wacky woohoo villains, or your mercenaries like Arcade or whatever. Just have a variety of them, a smorgasbord, Don't you end up being Steven Universe if you have nothing but sympathetic villains who all just like, oh, if you cry enough, they'll understand. They're all really good deep down.
Just never get rid of them. That's actually one of the problems Batman has, is just like they have these legitimately strong, interesting villains, and it's just like, okay, they keep going back to Arkham, and then they break out
the revolving door.
Yeah, it just keeps happening, and at some point, it's like, I'm tired of this.
And they never have the sympathetic villain to the left, so it's never like Captain Planet. Oh, he was polluting the environment for justified reasons.
Right.
Or he was some redneck bad guy or something. He was a homophobe. He was just misunderstood. But let's have some understanding for that race, that abject racist guy. They're always like on that guy. They're like, no, kill him, like put him down.
He has a reason for being gay or for hating gay people. You see, gay people, they gave one of his relatives AIDS or something. You can't do that.
There was a supervillain that had AIDS. What was that?
Captain Planet.
That was all of them.
Yeah,
the left are such bad writers. They're the worst writers.
They're terrible.
They had this one hero in. It was the second version of Speedy. I can't. was it Mia Harper? Was that her name? But she was HIV positive, but she was, running around with a bow and arrow with Green Arrow. And it's like, what if she accidentally cut herself and bled on somebody?
Yeah.
Is that really being a...
It would have been cool if they gave her superpowers because she was HIV positive, because then she'd have a conundrum: is if I could get cured, I'd lose my superpower.
They'll call her whatever, toxic blood or something.
or like some kind of glass cannon situation where it's like she can do all this stuff, but if she gets the sniffles, then it's over.
Yeah, right.
Or she like sort of like Iron Man, she has to build some kind of protective suit to protect from diseases and stuff. But then the super suit gives her superpower.
So Thomas, if you could take on any superhero power, think of all those powers that you could pick from, but you had to agree to get AIDS. Would you do any of them?
No.
Mark,
no.
Any of them?
No.
You could fly, go through time, blah blah blah. Silver Surfer.
I have the power to cure AIDS. Do I have the power to cure AIDS with my superpower?
That's asking for more wishes, Patrick. That's not fair.
What's my option at that point? Would invulnerability protect me from, like, does Superman get colds? Does he get a sniffle? I mean, would that help me? Or maybe Wolverine's healing factor? Because now all I care about is a superpower that'll protect me from my HIV. I don't care about.
You guys are trying to game the system. That monkey paw thing is never going to work out for you.
I'm just trying to get myself back to normal at this point. Like, give me a superpower that gets me back to
just what trade would you take? Quit trying to game the system. Would you agree to get AIDS if you could just take
your favorite system? Saying I wouldn't do it. Gaming the system too.
No, that's true. You're just telling the truth. Whether you would or wouldn't, what power would you take?
I was always the kid who said, no, I wouldn't want to be president of the United States. Sounds like a terrible job.
Well, then you definitely get AIDS if you're president.
I guess maybe Reed Richards level intelligence so that I can invent things like jetpacks and spaceships if I felt like it, but I can also create a cure for AIDS and save myself.
And Tony Stark, you'd be able to invent time travel in 4 minutes.
We have the way to treat AIDS apparently. If we watch a South Park episode, you all know you just inject $20,000 of cash into your veins
every few minutes.
I didn't see that one.
No, it's like that's definitely easier than dealing with Duke Phillips disease, of course.
Oh yeah, he has to inject it straight into his eyeball every half hour.
8 little ounces directly into my
Phillips?
eyeball.
What's that?
He was the boss from The Critic.
Oh, and he had to do that?
Yeah. There's an episode where he got like a terminal illness, and Jay, who's his underling, dedicates himself to finding a cure. And at the end of the episode, Jay finds a cure.
Just like the movie, or what was it?
Lorenzo's Oil.
And
Duke is like, isn't that the movie you called a mixture of fantasy and crap? And Jay goes, yes, I dubbed it Fantacrap, which was one of my favorite jokes from the show.
It's one of the best jokes ever because he just
copy movies all the time.
He's copying the plot of a movie he hated because he hates every movie.
And he's still got to do it.
He especially hates movies that people love.
For some reason, the cure involved sneezing into the cure as he was working on it and feeding it to a gerbil, and then I'm going to eat him. But but the cure ultimately was Duke Phillips had to inject 8 little ounces directly into his eyeball every 4 hours. And
it's injecting your own eyeballs.
Yeah.
Tell us about Literally 2 on Indiegogo.
Oh, we should do that.
That might be appropriate.
Oh, isn't that
sequel to Literally 1?
I'm so out of comics, I didn't even realize this was up and going. This was a thing.
Yeah, it is going.
In fact, it's very funded, as far as I know.
Yeah, it hit the funding goal, and in fact, there was 10 slots to have your character or whoever put in, and all 10 are already taken. Nice. I was thinking of maybe trying to open up some kind of bonus perk for all right, for $100, we'll give you a super extra limited character that I'll squeeze in somewhere in the script.
We'll print it on the edge of the paper.
Yeah, exactly. off the margins or in between the gutters or something like that. I mean, technically everything's in between the gutters. That's where the comic is. But Literally 2, the sequel. It's been written back in 2014. That was one thing I was also thinking about is oh no, that Turning Red looks like if you took Literally and then turned it into some kind of PG version of child porn or something. Horrific. And it's like, I should sue for ruining my comic, but literally 2 is actually a giant departure from 1, where it's it goes into like this. There's a time skip essentially, which a classic trope. But
you can't do that in comics.
But it may be in mangers. But yeah, Helen is older in literally 2. It's something I didn't want to blab because I don't want people to have it spoiled. Essentially,
She's old on literally 2, but she's 8,000 years older.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going to happen. Is she turns out to be like an ancient alien. She's from the planet Zarg Florp. She's friends with the Highlander. She goes back to what was the planet from Highlander 2?
Oh, let's not even remember Highlander 2.
Zeist.
Zeist, that's right.
One of the worst blockbuster experiences of my life was I went to Blockbusters and they didn't have Highlander 1 because that was what I went there specifically for. I was like, oh well, I'll just watch Highlander 2 instead. Yeah. And I didn't watch Highlander 1 after that for like 10 years because Highlander 2 was so garbage. Someone had to convince me to watch it when it came out on DVD.
Highlander 1, that the Tom Clancy outfit when he's in modernity he's got a black and white striped shirt, he's got the black under him, the black fingernails, and the hair slicked back. That's like almost every bad guy I've ever drawn in my comic books. You'll see him show up everywhere.
The Kurgan, I kind of see. Here's the thing: I didn't really like Highlander 1 because the good guy loses.
Yeah,
Kurgan loses. It's like that sucks.
He didn't lose. He wanted mortality.
I wanted like the Kurgan had the exact same motivation as the.
He had a good life. He had a better life than the supposed protagonist.
More interesting life. He was just partying, like even hundreds of years later in modern day, he was just partying all the time. Whereas
driving Highlander was driving a 70s muscle car around LA.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Clancy Brown. I mean, the Kurgan has like.
Oh yeah, I said Tom Clancy.
Yeah,
Tom Clancy. Yeah, that'd have been cool.
Boy,
too.
that's a brain fart.
Yeah, Clancy Brown though, the Kurgan is great in that movie because he actually develops as a character. When you see him in the past, he's like that overlord villain with no personality, no emotion. He's just like, I'm a bad guy and I'm going to kill you. But when he resurfaces centuries later in the present, he's like, woo, yeah, Daffy Duck bouncing all over the place, being crazy. It's like
he got exposed to 80s music. It was 80s music that did it.
Yes.
God, when he's in the car and he puts the cassette in and he's just like going nuts and the girl's in the seat with him, like it's so cool. Clancy Brown is great in that. But meanwhile, poor Raiden from Mortal Kombat, Christopher Lambert, he's just the same guy for 500 years, 600 years.
He's a boring actor too, man. Yeah. He was in the Greystoke Tarzan movie, just boring as heck.
I really like though his Nick Mullen impersonation of Christopher Lambert from all the Come Town clips I've been listening to. It's just ridiculous because
Clancy Brown became Mr. Krabs.
Yeah,
and
he did.
He really elevated,
and so did the boss,
Mr. Krabs, the worst villain than the Kurgan.
Yeah, and probably paid about 1 million times more.
Yes,
being Mr. Krabs than being.
I mean, because it's
a star in a live action famous movie.
Sometimes quantity is better than quality. Although, I mean, SpongeBob SquarePants is more quality than the Highlander at least. Man, I mean, the Highlander is not a bad movie. Highlander 2 is worse.
Highlander
it's one
2
good movie and 6 terrible movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the TV, a lot of those movies were spin-offs from the bizarre TV show, which I never watched. But.
Not at all. I remember watching like I think it was like the first episode, and it's like, this is really weird. This is like an R-rated TV show because I mean it's about chopping people's heads off and stabbing people, and it's also just like. And then nothing else happens.
There's no interest. All right, I got 7 minutes left. What do we got?
Okay, 7 minutes. Well, not nearly enough time to talk about comics. That's too bad. We didn't get to talk about comics. Whatever.
No, but comics suck. I want to talk about Highlander.
Comics are for children.
Yeah, it's all about NFTs.
Who likes comics? I mean, we could talk about the most famous Comicsgate comic of all time, Sonichu.
Sonichu is my favorite.
I was just thinking about that again. It's
actually
just
classic.
Somebody was angry at us because we insinuated that Chris Chan and Sonichu are more popular than anyone in Comicsgate. And it's like, but they are.
Which one was
yes.
that? Which one was Sonichu and Chris?
Sonichu was Chris Chan, the guy who raped his own mother recently. And
Ah,
he's in jail now.
Yeah, the guy,
Yeah.
the transgender
that guy. Oh, the funny
yeah.
Sonic guy.
Yeah,
Yes,
the funny
Sonic.
Is
Not
he
to
in
be
jail now?
mistaken for Tails Gets Trolled, which is a completely unrelated comic.
Oh, is that what I'm
guy
thinking
has
of? Because
never
I
raped
like
anyone,
Tails Get Trolled. Okay.
Tails Gets Trolled is legitimately
Tails
good.
Gets Trolled is actually good. That's
that one was
Mark
funny on purpose. Sonichu is funny because it's sad.
Was there any tie between Sonichu and Sonic 2, the movie? Sonichu?
No, I watched the movie in the theater. There was no gag about Sonichu, but there was a Sonic the Hedgehog animated series like 5 years ago called Sonic Boom, and they had a whole episode about Chris Chan.
Oh,
where,
yeah, that's right. They had
there's a guy who's like Sonic's stalker, who's like what's her face from Misery, Kathy Bates, and and the character's like an aardvark, but he's designed to look like Chris Chan if he was an aardvark.
Yeah, does he have
and
the
he like
striped
takes
shirt or
Sonic
something?
hostage, and he's like his biggest fanboy, and it's like really creepy and weird.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Why?
It's pretty bad.
By the way, anyone who likes the Sonic 2 movie,
I loved it.
I put in that category. So you're saying the writing was
my mom was really trying to talk me into seeing it. She was like, "Oh, are you going to see the Sonic 2 movie?" It's like, I didn't see the first one. I don't really care.
And did you see the sequel?
I haven't seen that.
You know, I guess we could see the first one. That was the thing, is at first it's like, oh, there's no way to rent it. There's no place to go out to rent these movies. And if you don't see them in the theaters and it's not on Netflix, we have no way to get it. We do now. It's just a pirate site. Luckily, that's one of the benefits of being friends with people in Asia. On our Discord.
Do now. We can steal it.
Yeah, it's just they'll just link to a site that's a giant conglomerate of different streaming sites. It's literally just a search engine for pirating movies.
Yeah.
As long as your malware defense, your virus scan is good, then those sites are great.
Yeah, because all they're doing is infecting you and taking down all your information.
It just hosts links to like like Stream Live and that kind of like all sorts of. It's sort of like how Rapid Share back in the day, it was like, here's how you can download files of all sorts of stuff. Is like, go on Rapid Share, and people would put comics. I remember that. And that, that's how you would could easily pirate stuff in sort of a rotating.
My comics were all over BitTorrent.
Yeah, that was the other way too. Is like that was the alternative. There was BitTorrent, and then there was the direct download, which again were like if it was on Rapid Share and it got taken down, you could just upload another one to Rapid Share and just link to that instead. So that's and that's what people do with like streaming movies and TV shows. Is that you go to a site that has the links to the websites that do the streaming.
So how long before Literally 2 is done and you go to Literally 3? Because there was a big gap between 1 and 2. What did you guys do?
Which one?
Big gap between Literally 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is that with 2, I had an artist working on it for the past couple of years, and just there was a huge delay. The whole COVID thing, basically, like he had a bunch of family stuff going on at that time, and COVID and the shutdown, so it really stopped him.
We're 1/3 of the way through Earthboard Jacobus coloring it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's my book that went out through Image, and I'm trying to get it
doing
colored.
the extra bonus stuff, and
it's taking a year to do. It's 90. By the way, 1/3 is 90 pages.
Did I even mention that I borrowed Ghostopolis from the library on the stream, or was that before the stream?
That was before the stream, so you've got it in your hands. My top seller.
It's like all smashed up because it's a library copy, but that gives it.
I noticed also it does have like a stamp in it from like the last time it was checked out. I think probably the physical stamp. They probably don't do that anymore, I assume, but it says from 2012.
Was the last time it was checked out?
Yeah.
You should just.
It says the copies. It says that Doug lives in California.
Yeah, it's true.
In the book.
Back then, I did.
It's that old.
Again, I got Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, and you just give me a ring when you do 3, please.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
That'll be in a couple of years.
Yeah,
I can wait.
At the earliest.
I mean, at least
can
when you
wait.
start 3, it will progress naturally and be finished instead of you stream. Like even when you were streaming to do work while other people talked, as opposed to streaming to stream and collect super chats and
Well, here's
stuff.
the thing: is it's not like I'm paying for Earthworm Jim 3 now, and then I don't get it in a couple years. No,
Yeah.
when you're ready with Earthworm Jim 3, that's when I'll pay for it.
Yeah, I've never not delivered.
No,
one of
you
my
always deliver
books,
on time. You're the one we
always
want to
on
be.
time. So people are throwing around this talk because they've been burned by so many books going, I just won't back another book until it's all done before I blah blah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you just need to work with people, with professionals you can trust.
There are a lot of videos. We have a lot of videos on our channel about that, about the whole a lot of people lately saying that they're swearing off crowdfunding and how it's bad for comics and bad for crowdfunding.
Terrible. That's not true. It's not true.
Comics,
some people really do need money to finish things. Some people really do make normal, honest mistakes. Say a 1 month delay, 2 months delay, the printer took a little long.
I can
There's
understand
normal
a 6
delays.
month delay even.
6 month delay is understandable. And then after a while it becomes, they were just lazy. They got your money and they're not inspired to work.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if they took the money too, because for literally 2, we didn't take any money. I was trying to, like basically a supporter was trying to help pay for the pages. And they're like, okay, we'll pay for the pages and I'll pay out of pocket if I have to, like each one at a time. So when they get done, so I'm not ripping off this guy at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was a few months ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to look for an artist because the guy told me, he's like, I can't really get this done. So I had like the first 6 pages from him and I'm keeping those. And then I went to Reddit, which is like, oh boy, Reddit. But I found an artist there. I found several artists who are willing to take it. I found one that's good. And they've fired off about 10 pages so far in the past few months. So the comic's
still the number one
board.
piece of email I get from people is, where can I buy your books? And I say,
yeah.
You'll have to go to eBay on secondary because I don't have my store open right now. I've got a ton of inventory I need to move too. I got to open that store back up, but I just didn't want to deal with shipping and
Earthworm Jim one into myself.
Yeah. Well, I can mail it to you someday. Don't make all that's going to happen is it's going to make my wife do some work. And
after the house fills up with NFT money.
Oh, yeah. We're doing some good NFT money. NFTs is great because they're a lot easier. First of all, they're easier than a comic. They're a little bit funner because they're a little breezier, just doing art and not dealing with the story so much. Mm-hmm. And I was really hung up. I've got the Bigfoot Bill note cards, and Bigfoot Bill 3. It has to wrap in that 3rd edition. It's going to be an enormous amount of work. I can't even imagine doing it. It's so much work. It's going to shut me down.
Yeah. Like I know I watched you drawing and inking and stuff, and that's like the grunt work, but in a way all that's set in stone. So like inking it's a lot of the grunt work, but is kind of easy apparently. So
it's really, it's like spiritually, it's like high as a kite. It's amazing to throw that line down, and when it works and you're going fast and you're all warmed up, it just feels great. And so I don't want to ever ruin that by trying to do a comic during NFT time. And it's only NFT time while I'm making a killing.
Yeah, it's about if something is really drawing your power juice or whatever, you gotta put it into that. You can't be like, okay, let me put off this thing that I really want to do that's get me a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's not like my love affair with comics doesn't end. There's lots of times where I'm longing when I'm sitting here at the Cintiq drawing with a Cintiq drawing an NFT, and I'm going, I would love to get to ink a page of a comic right now. Mm-hmm. It would be really fun. So I really relish it. I'm not running from work saying that I hate it. It's actually love it. It's just not responsible to go in and do that right now. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, at least, you're making money drawing. I have a day job and I like my job. I like the people I work with, I like the company I work with, but it's my day job. And, sometimes I'm sitting there, at my computer in my office, and I'm just like, I wish I was writing right now, writing scripts for comics, but this is my job. It's really helps pay the bills. It's got all my life insurance and dental insurance and everything wrapped up in it. I like this job.
I keep getting offers to do Hollywood TV shows, and I already know better. I know I'll last about a month before they fire me, so I'm going, nope. But I do get the offers. You're going to end up like
Netflix with Bone, where they canceled everything for Boss Baby recently.
Yeah,
I would love to do because I'm a big fan of Bone and Jeff Smith. I could take that series independent and finish that thing, no problem.
Bone has been around for so long, and they've been talking about a Bone animated series since the 90s. The fact that it hasn't happened yet is just one of those really weird things. It's like, what has taken so long?
They got to do a trilogy. They got to take their time on it.
I mean, if they do it right too, which I was thinking, a Bone for Netflix is like, there's so many ways that could just go wrong and just not be good. Even
it would have been the movie trilogy basically in a TV series, because you do, let's say, 22-minute episodes. If you did a full season of them, it would be about the same as 2 movies or 3 movies. So
Netflix usually makes them 28 minutes, and it's like, I kind of miss the 22-minute episode in a way. Like, that's why I really liked Smiling Friends. It was 11 minutes with credits.
Yeah.
Like, the credits though were like so hilariously fast, just zipping by on the screen.
They have those like in memoriam dedications at the end of every episode that go by so fast you don't know if it's a real dead person or a joke.
And I saw Jeff Smith saying, I don't want to do a Bone series now. He's done. And I'm like going, they're going to do it after you die.
Yeah.
It's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
So you might as well set
one thing is trying to have some control over it while you still exist.
Do it while you can.
One of the key things.
All right, I got to jump, guys.
All right.
It was good talking to you, Doug.
Mark, it was great to be with you.
Make sure to back literally too.
Back literally too. If I can find Indiegogo on somewhere,
it's the link's below in this video on YouTube.
Oh,
so if you
IGG got me at literally too.
Literally, our comics also. There's the King Wolf card at the bottom, and also a link to Iconic. I link to Iconic Comics in every video now.
Literally, why? Who owns Iconic Comics? Because that's
well, I do. First of all,
the CEO.
But one of our comics is on Iconic Comics.
Is it? Who does Iconic Comics?
Walmart 3 is that final 8 pages is me and my
brothers. Is that Tim Lim?
Tim doesn't own Iconic, but he publishes with. So Tim and I published through Iconic. But Walmart 3 was a book that Tim and I did, and then the backup story, the 8-page backup that concludes the Walmart trilogy, was by these two fellers.
Yeah,
and it was very funny.
We were hired. Apparently, that kind of pissed off a few people too, but not enough to matter, of course.
All the people that get angry at any of these decisions,
they don't matter. None of them matter.
It's not that they don't matter. It's just that they're empirically wrong.
Yes.
Doug TenNapel says about literally, it's a comic that you should be reading.
Yeah. I didn't say buy it on Indiegogo. I said you should be reading it.
Yes.
On a BitTorrent.
Which means pirate it if you have to, if that's what you got to do. Although, I mean, that's why I upload the literally #1 is on Webtoon and Tapas. So you can read that for free officially.
And it was $1.
So do you support these guys? Because that money will help you guys with printing. It'll help you guys with some drawing. And you guys, for people that are in comics,
we're the ones who need it the most. We need the money more than anyone else.
Wasting your money.
Nobody else
don't waste your money on comics that don't come out. Waste your money on comics that do come out.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being on with us, Doug.
Yeah. God bless you guys. Thanks for having me on. Mark, good to see you. Thomas, Patrick, hang in there, buddy. Thanks. It's an honor to just catch up with you guys. I don't get to see you guys.
It is an honor to catch up with.
I am coming out with a comic of my own too.
Oh really?
Yeah. That's coming out, I think, relatively soonish.
I'll buy it if you draw it.
I did draw a comic too on the literally web.
The guy I'm getting to draw the comic is great. He's doing great work already.
I don't want great work. I want your work.
Well, we should do that then. Yeah.
I did make some of those. I made some storyboards.
We'll draw one.
I drew some storyboards for my comic.
Just remember the Bad Sonic comic is the greatest comic ever made.
Yeah. Right. So good one. All right. See y'all. Are we?
I would say we should keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hang out for another 20, 30 minutes if you want.
Yeah. That was one of the things also about Wall Might is I don't think a lot of people even realized that me and my brother wrote the ending, that ending backup story to it, which was sort of, we were kind of directed to go off the rails. It was like you and Tim were
So
telling us,
Tim drew
okay,
it.
this.
So I think a lot of people when they were reading Wall Might, I mean, because
Mhm.
Tim drew it, they just assumed it was the same creative team. But yeah, no, you guys wrote
Some
that
people
all
think
on your
Tim
own.
write it.
Huh?
Some people think that Tim writes all of he writes Common America and all that stuff. I've seen that before.
I mean, he co-plots the story with me. So I mean, right,
Mhm.
like today, I sent him a summary treatment for our next book, and he's going to get his notes back to me. But I mean, the scripting is me and everything. But yeah, it's
The
so that
scripting's the
Walmart
hardest part.
backup you guys did. One, it was really funny, but two, I'm honestly surprised most people didn't notice that it was written by someone that wasn't me because your style of humor is different from mine. And it's really funny. That's why I loved getting your script back because I loved reading somebody else writing those characters and seeing what
Mhm.
like angle of humor they got out of it. And you guys did an awesome job.
You
I
did
think a lot
fill
of
in like some of
people.
the character details. I noticed, like it was like you basically created the character version, the comic character version of like Wall Might and Flotus and that kind of stuff. And it's like you can put in the reference. I noticed you did that where you put in a few other references to the previous characters in the series, and it's like that's good, that helps. And
Oh yeah, that was just a continuity thing because
yeah.
it was a political parody book. So I think like you guys created because you hadn't read Wall Knight 3, the main story yet when you were
Yeah.
writing that because we were doing it at the same time. So you had come up with like different pun names for some political characters, and so we just gave them our pun names so they'd be consistent between the main story and the backup.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I think we just let you guys go crazy.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking, well, like, some creators could like take offense as, "Oh, I put this in and you overrode it," but I was like, "Oh, that's cool, actually. That in a way we all collaborated." So I was actually really happy with that.
I mean, I can't
Um,
be too angry. I could never be angry about getting a chance to do a guest spot on somebody's comic,
well, and
and
getting paid
then
to do it. We weren't just doing it for free either, which was really cool.
yeah.
And I would love to do another one, but there doesn't even seem to be space in the Common America books for like any backup stories or
Yeah, I mean, we do have a backup, but the thing is that the way we use our backup in Common America is that it's part of. So we do two Common Americas and one Black Ops each year, and the backups in those three books all build towards the next crossover event, which is usually in the Black Ops book. So it's
it's
almost
like a
like a
coda.
serialized story, like a three-parter that builds up
Yeah.
towards the next one. Yeah,
It's like arc and then arc and then arc and then yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and what's funny is that the ending of that last arc really took a lot of people by surprise. That it was like big conclusion with like twists and payoff and that kind of stuff. And people were like, "Whoa, this is like an actual written story." Because with
Yeah.
comics, I think a lot of people don't expect any quality. They just expect it to look good, and the standards are so low that people are like, if it just looks good and is vaguely coherent, people are like, well, that was a really good comic. They're not used to a story that actually
Well,
has like a
especially
conclusion
especially
and a
for the
build up.
existing reader base for comics in general
Yeah.
nowadays, it seems.
I mean,
Well, I
for
mean,
manga, people demand like if you were reading a manga and it didn't have like some kind of build, like even the first issue, the first chapter of any manga, if it didn't have some kind of build up, and it's funny because it's in like 20 to 30 pages, and it's like it has to have some kind of story conclusion, whereas a lot of American comics will have 40 pages or more and not even start an introduction or get out of the epilogue with just exposition, just splattered paragraphs and paragraphs of completely useless exposition about characters or events that don't have anything to do with what happens in the story.
well, the
And that's such a
biggest
standard in comic. People just expect that in American comics.
Yeah, the biggest compliment that we get is when we see people online discussing the story. Like they're saying like, "Oh, Carly did this. Oh man, I can't believe
Yeah, that
she
was
did
another thing
that."
we
And
were
like,
talking about, and we've done videos about
yeah,
that too on our Subscribe Star. That was the other thing I was trying to plug our Subscribe Star by being like, we have videos about this. It's on our Subscribe Star, but it's behind the paywall if you want to see them. But yeah, a lot of people genuinely talking up how they like the characters and the events. Are like, oh, I really like when this happens in Common America. And you don't even see that with other comics, except for ours, of course.
Yeah. Well, what we notice is that with a lot of comics is that, I mean, people will sometimes they'll talk about the comic in a metatextual context where they say like, oh man, sometimes they'll do like, oh, SJW. Sometimes they'll say like, oh, this comic's groundbreaking. It has a gay transgender handicapped character, the first ever in a Marvel comic book or something. But they don't talk about the story. They'll talk about the artwork, which is metatextual in its own way. They'll talk about the first of the book if it's hitting some milestone. They'll talk about this, but they never talk about the plot or the characters or speculation, unless there's a very core group of people who are really interested in that. But I've noticed a lot of books there aren't. Instead, it's all just everybody talking about the meta aspect of it. What we noticed with Common America is that people love Tim's art, and they do talk about Tim's art, but they always talk about it in tandem with the story. And we don't comment, and just because we don't hit like on someone's tweet doesn't mean we aren't reading it or appreciating it. Though when someone is talking about speculation and they're trying to predict where the storyline is going to go, where the character arcs are going to go, we see those and we find those tweets really interesting. We just don't hit like because we don't want to make people think that, like, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen, or like, oh, you got it right. We don't want to do that and spoil anything. But we always really enjoy seeing people speculate and talk about our stories. It means that we're engaging them enough to give a shit.
Yeah, they want to actually. They want to know. Yeah, that's how you know you've got real investment.
Which is the most important. That's the most important thing that a comic can do, is get the reader invested in what's happening. And it's, again, that's such a rarity in American comics these days, because American comics don't really want that.
Was interesting reading that on literally. It's like the comic's already been out, but you start posting it to Webtoon, and people are like, oh, what's going to happen? Is this all happening in her imagination and stuff? And
yeah, we don't get as many comments, but it's funny is that each episode would have a few readers being like, oh man, what's going on? And a lot of people being like, oh, you know what? I think this is all in her imagination. It's not even really happening. So the sort of Calvin and Hobbes thing, because of that very that open influence and inspiration.
That's how you know they're actually paying attention.
Yes.
First off, they're paying attention. Secondly, they're actually invested. They're on board with this. And you get that because it's Webtoon. You will not get that from a comic book shop, because a comic book shop will not carry this comic.
Well, a lot of the American comic reader types would just look at the art. In fact, there's been a lot of people who dismiss the art for literally one as, like, they say that it's CalArt style, or that it looks like CalArts, and it's like, it doesn't though.
It doesn't mean anything. When someone says CalArts now, it's kind of lost all meaning. Yeah. When everything's CalArts, nothing is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. People who point out or claim that something is CalArts these days.
Well, then again, there was somebody who was accusing Common America recently of just being X meets Y. And it's like,
yes,
that's a weird statement to make.
I think they just said that because they knew that they're trying to hit a nerve with us, because we're always critiquing X meets Y. So they just made up some bullshit to try and
get they did say they didn't say, they never said why. They never said how it's supposed to be that, because it isn't. But they didn't.
They also said it was porn, and there's nothing pornographic at all in Common America, so we just kind of disregarded all that.
Well, that's one of the signs that you're really getting popular, is that you'll bring out the schizos who are like having a seizure because your comic exists and you exist. Like, oh, you exist? No, I can't. And they're fucking thrashing, and they're gripping their armrest so much that blood is spraying out of their armrests. They can't. Right. They can't.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people who are getting into making any sort of medium, if you're making art, if you're telling stories, and you want to gain readership and you want to gain popularity and you want people to notice you, it's a two-way street. The more people who notice you and like you, the more people are going to notice you and hate you. And you just have to deal with that. You just have to accept that. It's just the way things are.
Some of the biggest creators, some of the biggest, most famous and most talented people were very polarizing. Like what was it? The first
Frank Miller.
Yeah, what was the first thing that from Private Parts? It's like the first shot of popularity. It was like 50-50 people listening to him because they hate him.
I remember that. Yeah, It was that part in Private Parts where Howard Stern convinces a lady to lay her speaker down, then sit on it, and then he like
Yeah.
does the reverb, and she has like an orgasm over the radio, and all the sensors are going crazy. But the studio is like, no, his numbers are up. I'm like, but I thought everybody hated him. Yeah, but they can't stop listening to him.
Yeah, they actually polled people and said like half of the people who listen who hate him, the people who hate him say they listen to him because they just want to hear what he's going to do next, at least to hate it. And the thing is that people who hate your stuff are essentially still platforming you, which is another thing that we were talking about in a lot of our old videos, is that if you really hate someone or something,
you don't listen.
The thing you should do is ignore it.
You don't actually listen to somebody.
That's what I do. I actually don't like Howard Stern, so I probably only listened to maybe one Howard Stern show in my entire life.
I watched the movie. Yeah,
attention to him.
I watched the movie,
and
I read
both of his books.
Miss America and Private Parts.
Yeah,
I actually like the for Miss America.
They were just conversational, but and also
your time is so limited, you know, like why spend it watching or listening to or reading things you hate? I'd rather spend my free time reading the things I enjoy.
I've never gotten people who are like hate watchers. We have hate watchers, of course. We have a lot of people, but and there's a difference between that and cow watching, which I've noticed other people getting that, but when it comes to hate watching, it's like if you even bring us up, and some of them know this too, of course. If you bring us up at all, you're platforming us, and you're going to raise interest in us, which is what anyone who's been even remotely butt mad at Common America, all they did was raise Common America's visual profile and got more people
it's
looking at it.
Any publicity is good publicity kind of like rhetoric, you know? Or what's that part from, was it Pirates of the Caribbean, where that one guy's like, you're the worst pirate I've ever heard of. He's like, but you've heard of me.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's that kind of thing. It's, people now, at least they know the Common American name, IP, and visuals. They may now associate it with something that's completely untrue, but they know what it is.
Yeah, or it makes them curious. They look into it, find out what they heard was wrong, and all of a sudden they like the comic. That was probably one of the biggest boosts to Common America's fame right now was that just there was this it was a tweet basically, because we don't do like news updates and stuff. We talk about this on our Discord at least, but yeah, somebody tweeted being like, "Oh, Common America just looks like," or somebody replied saying, what's your favorite superhero that's not Marvel or DC? And somebody said a few people actually said Common America, and like the first one that said Common America got all these quote retweets that were like, disgusting, but all of this it made a ton of people see it. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, that either, is like as soon as you're
small, if you're already small,
more people to look at it.
If you're starting off or you're trying to get bigger, one of the best ways to increase your popularity even more is to be notorious.
Yeah, to be hated in a way even. But it works, though. It absolutely works. And in fact,
it really especially helps
new readers.
It especially helps to have something.
Some people do it intentionally. A lot of people
have something
intentionally too.
It's not enough to just be notorious. You actually have to have some talent behind it.
Yeah, you have to be able to back it up. Yeah, because if you just make a crappy comic that gets notorious for being bad, people will make fun of it. Will most likely drop it after time.
That's the thing too, is about Sonichu.
Yeah,
it's notoriously bad, but it's still only ever at like lolcow levels.
People keep up with it because the guy who made it is constantly having new.
He's like clinically insane. He ran over a GameStop employee with his car because Sonic's arms were blue. The guy's nuts. People enjoy Sonichu. They enjoy it ironically, which is the thing, and that'll only get you so far.
Yeah, they don't even really read the comic. They just keep up with the guy. It's not even about the comic anymore. The comic is just a part of how the guy is embarrassing or silly or stupid or whatever.
Or like, what was that comic that Fantagraphics published? It was this guy's web comic, and it's where the Pepe the Frog meme came from.
Oh yeah, Boys Club.
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Matt
and
Fury.
they published that, and people could read the comic, and the comic itself is, not
it's
is
kind of
not like a huge,
generic
big, great like
stoner joke.
masterpiece,
it's
but
one of those
people read
things.
it, yeah,
It's
because they
just
recognize the meme.
it's meme magic actually. It's what happens with 4chan is 4chan can basically just launch anything into the stratosphere if people just start repeating whatever they see enough. It became a white nationalist hate symbol to the point where the creator killed off his creation
And then
because
revived him.
he was so upset by it. And it's like,
Oh yeah, I forgot he
you
did
don't
that.
actually own this character.
People invented the idea of NFTs of Pepe the Frog before there were even NFTs.
Yeah,
Because
everyone came
there
up with
was
their
the
own
jokes
version
about
of
the
Pepe,
diamond
like the
Pepes
rare
and stuff.
Pepes. Yeah, and then someone found a way to monetize that.
Yeah. Which was the next logical step. And that's the thing about comics, and we've been saying this ever since before the beginning, is that the new way to make comics is to find a way to monetize them in a way that's not limited by the corporations, by the big two. It's like you don't have to, in order to make a comic, you don't have to have it published by Marvel or DC. You don't have to have it published physically at all. You can make it and show it to, in fact, the market's never been better for that because micropayment sites and all this stuff are just prevalent everywhere on everything now. And
Right,
so getting people to pay you for something is easier
you
than
can.
ever.
Back in the day, like, so everybody and their mother has a web comic now. I mean, even we have one on Webtoons, the Count
Yeah.
America the web series. But if you think back in the day, like if you wanted to do a 4-panel comic strip and get it published so people could read it back in 1960, well, good fucking luck. You had to
Yeah.
convince King Feature Syndicate or somebody to run your comic strip, and there was a 1 in a million chance that they'd actually pick your comic up and do it. I watched a documentary on the history of Calvin and Hobbes and what Watterson had to go through to finally get someone to publish Calvin and Hobbes back in the day. And even as much of a staple as that is now, like it took a lot of work in that environment when getting your stuff published was so difficult, and there were so many kingmakers and so many people that you had to please just to get your book seen. Where now you just publish it on Webtoons, you put it on Amazon Kindle, you can put your stuff out there. The hard part now is just getting people to notice it because there's a glut. But if you just want to publish it and make it available, you can just go ahead and do that, and it's right there and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that needs to be exploited instead of acting like, oh, those aren't real comics. Again, it's this weird contingent in American.
It's very
American
hateful.
comics is one of the most unhealthy fandoms in the entire.
It is very it's very hateful of like creators.
Yeah,
the people who are trying to promote that.
But it's status
be...
worship, though. It's hateful of creators who don't have status. Like it's all about celebrity status and worshiping something. Like the most unhealthy celebrity worship is again in American comics, and it's over American comics celebrities who are usually just doodlers or people who made like 500 different characters, and they got picked up by other creators who actually turned those characters into something interesting or something like that.
It's a lot of people who lucked into the business.
Yeah, or gained their way in, or nepotism.
Like, even going all the way back to the Silver Age, it's like some of these guys, they didn't really make anything amazing. They were just there first.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Spider-Man.
And with no competition.
People.
It was like zero competition.
I remember specifically being told by a legitimate scam artist he was going on and on about how important Spider-Man is. And it's like, Spider-Man's done. Spider-Man had his day. He had his chance.
Spider-Man was the guy who made a deal with Demon to kill his marriage in order to save an old lady who was probably going to die in a few years anyways. That's the superhero that everyone's talking about, right?
I mean, if you trace back even some of the big two IPs now that are still existing and are still powerhouses, some of them didn't survive by merit. They survived by legal shenanigans.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel, the Shazam version, when it was published by Fawcett Comics, outsold Superman. And by a wide margin. Captain Marvel Jr. was outselling Superman in the Silver Age, to the point that DC their National Comics at the time, just sued Fawcett Comics. And they kept the lawsuit going so long that Fawcett Comics went bankrupt. and then DC bought the rights to Captain Marvel and Shazam and started publishing their own books and folded them into their own universe. But they couldn't compete with Captain Marvel, so they just basically used a bunch of legal trickery to acquire him. It's like we can't beat them, so we're just going to absorb them.
Yeah, the sleaziness of the practice of American comics goes back before even but essentially what Chuck Dixon called the fans taking over, which he said was around the 70s, the 60s and 70s. I think more the 70s specifically, is the fans of superhero comics taking over the entire industry and just turning everything into superhero comics, so that when you thought of American comics, you thought of superheroes. When there used to be all these other genres. There used to be war comics and Western comics and stuff like, and horror comics, lots of horror comics.
That's the thing too, is that unfortunately, so superheroes were a fad. When World War II ended, superheroes basically ended. And like All-Star Comics, the book that had Justice Society in it, like that became All-Star Western, and it became a Western book. Green Lantern turned into a crime suspense anthology that had nothing to do with Green Lantern. Like that was, and like romance comics were the thing, monster comics and horror comics. But then like the Comics Code Authority legit kind of just like neutered our industry, like it did more damage than people realized at the time. And so that all you could do after that was superhero books. And so they made a big comeback after the Comics Code Authority, and that's just been our industry ever since, because you couldn't do war comics, they were too violent. You couldn't do romance comics, they were too sexual. You couldn't do horror comics, they were too gory. All you could do was superhero comics. And we got
Westerns, war and horror basically are just too violent, and it's like superheroes were this safe version. I mean, it's like, all the Marvel movies today, all of them are PG-13. All of them kind of have that, that same formula, the same arcs, the same story beats.
Well, the thing too now though is that there is no more Comics Code Authority. We're no longer hampered by anything like preventing us from doing the genres we want to do. But it's just superheroes are synonymous so much. Like when people think comics,
the fans took over. That was the thing, and that's what we've been talking about with when it comes to fans, is that fans are kind of necessary, of course, because it means something successful, and people don't really differentiate between like an enjoyer of something and a fan, but there really needs to be a differentiation. People need to understand that there is a huge, stark difference between what really a fan is, which is essentially like a psychopath who likes something, and just a reader or an appreciator, which is usually the better option, because they will buy your stuff.
That is the thing is, on the one hand, it's like, I want to get these people out of the industry. If I have any goal in comics besides being able to fucking make stories, it's to get these people out of comics. I want the audience for comics out of comics so I can replace them. But it's like, how do I do that? How do I even do that?
I mean, it involves some kind of train station that holds people in some areas, something like that.
I like stuff. I mean, obviously, I love horror movies, but I know that a lot of what I enjoy is objectively shit. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. That also doesn't mean that I can't say, no, it's a misunderstood masterpiece and you're just too stupid to understand. No, it's like
you have to pretend that the people who hate it or whatever are sending you death threats, or you have to manufacture, send yourself a cell phone and pretend that people are trying to dox you with it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, it's like, I enjoy Ninja Turtles. I had a Ninja Turtles website that I ran for 10 years. But I also understand that it's Ninja fucking Turtles, and if people, don't like it, that's
it's supposed to be goofy. That's the appreciation of something that's supposed to be goofy. It doesn't have to be your life. It doesn't have to be your ego. You don't have to attach your ego to it. And if somebody doesn't like it, you don't have to be like, that person is now my enemy for life. That's what an actual fan is like, is somebody who makes enemies based on somebody not having
their entire psychology is bound up in the concept of the thing that they're spending money on.
It's in the DSM-4. It's under, borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, I mean, I don't play tabletop RPGs, pen and paper RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons stuff, Rifts or whatever. I understand the appeal of them though, and I think it's fine for people to like them. I don't like Star Trek either, but I understand, or Doctor Who, but people, it's fine if they enjoy that, and I don't have to enjoy it
You know
myself.
what I really think is cool is the Warhammer 40K universe, but I will never buy one of those miniatures.
Yeah, I'll never play the actual game, the tabletop version of it, but it's like, oh, the stories are cool, the designs are cool.
I was surprised. It was like, okay, this stuff looks like it's been around for a while, but I've never heard of it before. It's been around since like the 80s. Technically, Warhammer Fantasy has been around since the 70s.
Yeah, I got this weird thing with fighting games, like Capcom fighting games, like Street Fighter and Final Fight, that whole universe of the Capcom Fighter universe. I'm dog shit at fighting games, 2D fighters. I'm terrible. I could never beat anybody in Street Fighter Alpha. You could be playing as Dan, and I couldn't beat you. I'm terrible. But I love Street Fighter. I like the characters. I like the narrative. I like the universe. I like everything about it. I just can't play the games very well. People think that's weird. It's like, how can you like Street Fighter and be bad at the games? Like, I just like the characters, bro.
Well, a lot of it is the style and the design and the people, the art of it. The art of it is almost bigger than the games. In fact, that's why I understand, like, again, that's one of the fandom things is like, okay, you like the games. Well, how many of them have you finished? You killed the final boss. What happens at the end of Street Fighter 3 Alpha? And it's like, I don't play the games. I like Chun-Li's thighs. That's it.
Yeah, I don't really like. I love video games. I don't really play a lot of fighting games. I don't play Pokemon. It's like the one big disconnect between me and like everyone else who plays video games is like, I don't care about Pokemon. I don't like Pokemon.
I tried one of the Pokemon games, and after like a couple hours, I was like, there are about 5 other games I own right now that are like this times 10 with like more content and more other stuff happening. And
I just heard that it was described. It's described as being like a rock, paper, scissors JRPG. And it's like, well, I've had enough of that.
Yeah,
I could just play rock, paper, scissors.
I like the open world aspect of RPGs, but I don't like the level grinding, which is why I don't play a lot of them. I'll play like a Zelda game because that's an action RPG. But if it's a game where, you've got to grind for experience points by killing like a bunch of like low level enemies for 2 hours to try and level up, and then you can go and do something fun for 5 minutes, and then you got to grind some more. It's like, that's not fun. It's like when someone says like, man, Final Fantasy whatever took me 48 hours to beat. It's such a long game. Like, yeah, but how much of that was actually doing something fun, and how much of that was you just killing pigs in the woods?
How much of it was actually playing the game?
Yeah, and
that is the thing, is when
there was a huge trend.
If grinding is necessary, then that's a problem. That's a fault.
There was a giant era of JRPGs where it was all about the grind more than, especially in the early Korean MMO days. But yeah, a lot of those. But the thing is, the early RPGs, the first ones were a huge grind, and then the Super Nintendo era was way laid off the fucking grind, and it was about mostly about the story and the characters and going through the adventure. And usually you would just fight enough enemies to naturally level. And the thing is that there was an era where they sort of understood the balance, where grinding would just make you stronger than you needed to be. So it was a benefit, but it wasn't a requirement. And then it went back to like grind at like the late 90s, early 2000s. And JRPGs really died for a long time because everyone just got tired of them, because a lot of other games were coming out that were just more fun and interesting. And that's where the American market kind of took over.
Yeah, when everybody, I remember back in the day, at least when like Angry Video Game Nerd, he was Angry Nintendo Nerd, he's put his first video out in like 2007 or whatever, and all of his like complaints about Castlevania 2, and everyone said that was a shitty game. But I was like, you think you're calling it shitty for the wrong reasons. Like the shittiness isn't because you have to explore or because like there are hidden things in the game. What's shitty is that you have to spend half an hour killing skeletons in the woods just to get enough hearts to go and buy something, or just
going back and
level
forth
up. Like, that's boring. I mean, leveling up in a game is fun when it's something like Zelda, or the best Zelda game on NES is Crystallis by SNK, not
Yeah,
even Zelda.
that's one of the only games we ever bought twice before
It's so good because it takes everything from Zelda 1 and improves upon it. But the idea is that you level up narratively throughout the story. You beat a boss, you get a heart container, or you're rewarded for exploring and doing side quests by getting heart containers
That
or
one
getting
did.
extra
Crystal
powers that
did
make you
have
stronger.
XP leveling too.
Yeah,
Actually,
there were 16 levels.
Yeah.
I remember that specifically.
Yeah, 16 was the max, but yeah, that's the thing. You don't go up to 99 or whatever. You hit 16 and you're the strongest you could ever be. But it was really about finding the items, and then you get the heal spell. Now you can just heal at will with your MP and stuff. And it's like that's kind of all you need. You got the bare essentials right there.
That
You
was
can beat the game without leveling.
That's just a really fun game.
It's so good. I wish it had become a franchise, and unfortunately it didn't, because that would have been a great competitor to
I love
Zelda
a remake, or a ripoff or something. But the soundtrack to it also was one of the best soundtracks of the entire NES era. But that's the intro music to most of our videos, or all of our videos, really is the Fields theme, the first few notes from the Fields theme of Chrysalis.
Yep. And that's the thing too, is the overworld in Crystallis works so well. You don't have to go out and spend 2 hours killing 1,000 slimes to get your XP up. You can actually go and do stuff that progresses the story or side quests or whatever. It even has the shooting a laser from your sword thing that Zelda had, but it perfects that. You don't have to have full health to shoot your laser. You can charge it up and shoot it. It's just everything that's in Zelda is in Crystallis, but works better.
Instead of leveling up your character and grinding to get better stuff, you find items as you beat a boss, and it gives you an item that gives you another level to your sword.
There was actually something in I actually, because I replayed it recently and I had forgotten. It's usually only one level, but if you attack some of the bosses too early, they take no damage. It's kind of funny. It's a funny RPG element, but if you're too low level,
it's weird.
The bosses will
Breath of Fire did that
also.
Breath of Fire did that, where if you were like 2 levels beneath the enemy you were fighting, you would do almost no damage at all.
It was their way of saying, like, hey, you don't belong here yet. Go follow a different path.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminds me of the original Zelda 1, right? It's like if a friend told you how to get through the Lost Woods, northwest, southwest, you could go to Death Mountain early, like right out of the gates in the game. But the first thing you find when you get through the Lost Woods are a bunch of Lionels, those characters who do they shoot lasers at you from their swords, and it takes 3 hearts. One hit takes 3 hearts, and you start the game with 3 hearts. So one hit from these characters on the overworld kills you immediately. So there's no way for you to get through there without following the prescribed path and leveling up by beating smaller dungeons first, and then you can go and wreck the Lionels and move along to the story. It was like a natural way of guiding you along the correct path, the prescribed path throughout the game, while still making it feel open world. Or you could just do it what they did and put a fucking Snorlax in your way, and then you can't get past it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, the Fallout games do that too, where even up to 3 in New Vegas and stuff is like if you're playing New Vegas and you even see a Cazador, it's like, oh, a big moth or something, whatever, and then it's going to kill you in 2 hits if you haven't actually.
It'll poison you to death. So even if you manage to kill it, it's very likely to kill you too.
Yeah, that's right, because it poisons you, so you'll just waste away. No matter how many stim packs you eat, it's going to out damage your stim packs healing. But that to that extent, there's an element of encouraging you to go find the other stuff instead of skipping to the end. But the grinding for a while in JRPGs was just considered here, you just do this while
it was grinding. Really the fault of their own success. And Final Fantasy 2 and 3 in the US
and Chrono Trigger.
Those did it absolutely right. And then Final Fantasy 7 also did. But after Final Fantasy 7, we got 10 million JRPGs that were old school. That's where the weeaboos come out. The weeaboos came out to play and were like, we want the old original.
Yeah, again, fans and fandom. That was the big problem, was the fandom, and it was like, oh, Blue Dragon is one of the best, and like meanwhile nobody else played it because it was boring. It was suck. It was
Yeah, and
100%
that's the thing, is
grind.
that it shouldn't be boring. So I think the last time I tried playing anything that was RPG-esque was PS2 era. That's how old I am. I rented Kingdom Hearts 1, and it's like, I am so fucking sick of just smashing through all these little heartless minions, and oh yeah, I'm grinding and I'm getting all these experience points, but this is so boring. I don't even want to go to the other Disney planets. I don't care anymore. This is dull.
Yeah, I always heard that one come out, and it was like, yeah, it's a Disney and anime. And it's like, it sounds like the worst fandoms on the planet,
Yeah,
aside
yeah,
from
right.
comic
But
book fans.
hey, Final Fantasy meets Disney. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's dumb. But at the time, I was like, I didn't care about the Final Fantasy aspect. I was like, oh, it's a game where you can go to the different Disney movies and fight the different Disney villains and whatever. That could be fun. But it's
Mhm.
done through the lens of like a JRPG, where just all you're doing is just smashing the same like one hit kill minion enemies, and just doing it over and over and over
For
again
all
to grind for
eternity.
experience. And it's so boring. It's like, I don't care if like the background changes, if you're in like Hercules or Alice in Wonderland or 101 Dalmatians. It doesn't
Mm.
matter. The background doesn't mean a difference if the gameplay is the same in every world, where you're just doing the same
Yeah.
thing over
And
and
then,
over
then
again.
at that point, I'd be asking myself, so why Disney anyway? Disney and Final Fantasy, it just seems like two very distinctly different universes. Why are they combined together?
Yeah, why is Goofy talking about how what happens to you when you lose your soul? It's like,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't want
You
to
ever see
actually care about this.
that panel from one like the Kingdom Hearts manga, where it's Donald Duck and he's like giving this like
Yeah.
10 sentence speech about the nature of the soul and shit
Yeah.
like that, and you're trying to read it in Donald's voice. It's just, what the hell.
Yeah,
Which you
actually
clearly
playing the
supposed to.
game.
You know what that reminds me? The Kingdom Hearts. The best thing I've ever heard about Kingdom Hearts wasn't it MC Chris, who
Oh yeah, he was
Oh
doing.
yeah, geez, I forgot about him.
yeah, that was a
He was at.
long time
He
ago.
did
But
a Kingdom Hearts 2 like rap or whatever kind of music he did, where he's just complained about. Oh no, it wasn't a rap. He just did a video where he's like, "Man, like what the fuck's going on, man?
It
Like
was
who is this
two.
character,
comparing it
Sora? I
to
want to play as
Resident
Donald."
Evil 4.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it
and he's
was
like
how
at the end, he's
Resident
like,
Evil 4 is a better game, which
yeah, he's
it
like, "Fuck
definitely
this! I'm gonna play
was.
Resident Evil 4. I gotta go save the president's daughter. She needs you. Yeah, fight the
Yeah.
zombies."
That you don't need to make a profile. Look out! His axe is on fire. He's coming at you. He's
He
Now,
killed your
oh man,
family.
Resident Evil 4 was fun. I love that. I know it diverged from the Resident Evil gameplay style, but
Yeah,
It kind
let's
of
be
did
which
honest,
to
the
is
me.
Resident Evil
exactly why I
gameplay style
wanted.
kind of sucked.
But
Exactly
the
what I
first
wanted.
Resident Evil games were like basically the first three are the same game over and over again with like terrible controls and then just some of the lamest puzzles. It was like Myst basically, but with
Yeah,
some zombies in
yeah,
it.
so many like, ooh, you've got to slide panels around,
Yeah,
like one of those games your mom like would buy at the drugstore to give to you on a road trip to keep you quiet
yeah,
for
for like
like an
50
hour.
cents.
Yeah, one of those
Like
like
move the
panel
little
sliding
ball
games.
around,
Ugh.
slide the thing so that the little BB pellet falls into the hole, or get
Yeah.
it around the holes. And it's like, this isn't a game. This is just
Yeah,
annoying.
I mean, I can play that for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, but for 60 hours, no.
No, but yeah, and that's Resident Evil 4 did have one of those sliding block. Or I think it had two, but
Yeah,
they're
That's my
relatively
least.
small.
Yeah, that
but
was
man,
my
that
least
game
favorite
was
part.
fun, especially on the
Yeah.
Wii, because that was a game where the Wiimote
Yeah.
actually like improved the
Yes.
experience. Where like, because it's like a gun, right? It's like a light gun game, and you're playing at home, and like, oh
Yeah,
shit, this is really
exactly.
In fact,
fun.
yeah, I bought it
They
on the
just released
GameCube.
it in VR for
Yeah,
the Oculus
Oh,
yeah, I
Quest
want
2, I
that.
think.
We bought it for the GameCube, even though we didn't have a GameCube. Then we bought
Yeah.
it for the Wii, and we had a Wii, and then I bought it on PC when it was released on
Yes, we
Steam.
bought it 3 times.
Yeah, it was
And
worth it.
I know it's a different experience because it moves so much faster, right? It's not like the slow, spooky atmospheric, but
Where
it
you're
has its
SWAT
moments
kicking
where,
through doors and shit.
yeah, you're just like kicking ass through like these villages full of like Spanish people screaming at you, and you're fighting giants. And then it has its moments of like spooky stuff. Like when you go to the monastery and there's those chanting monks that can kind of just like teleport behind you or whatever.
Yeah, the game is really good.
It's creepy atmosphere. And then there's the regenerator. The regenerator is freaky.
Yeah, there was somebody who was explaining it as like, you know, as in a positive review of the game. They're like, this is proof that you don't have to limit how much ammo you have in order to make the game scary. And he's like, you know what? That's actually true.
The game does still limit you on ammo, but it's easier to be careful with it and use it properly. Like if you really shoot somebody in the leg and then go run up to them and do a suplex and blow their heads off with a suplex, you just saved yourself a shitload of ammo.
But I mean, that was the thing is, I really like the RE2 remake, and I played it a couple of times and I beat it. But there was one section I remember where I ran out of ammo, and I was basically just screwed until I wandered around long enough to get through the game with no bullets, nothing.
So the quote unquote realism of the like OG Resident Evil style, like that was fun for one game, Resident Evil 1, where it's like, oh, if you can only carry so many items on you, so you've got to put them in lock boxes. But if you want that item later, you got to go back to that lockbox because it's not going to appear in every lockbox in the mansion. Oh, and you only have so many typewriter ink tapes, so you can only save your progress so many times. So you better hope that you're playing for 5 hours and making legit progress. Oh, you only play for 30 minutes? Well, you better not bother saving and just redo it all again next time. Like, that's not fun.
Yeah, that was that was also that was a problem. That was the game killer for me that made me stop playing Majora's Mask. And we never owned it, but I get it on the emulator, and it's like, oh, this is the sequel to Ocarina of Time. I never got to play this. I wish I did. So I start playing it, and I'm playing it and playing it. I play for like an hour and a half, and it's like, okay, I want to take a break. How do I save? Because it's not letting me save the same way. It must be a different save system. And in frustration,
you have to go Google. It's like, how do I save the first game? How do you save these games?
And it turns out you save by resetting all of your progress and then sending yourself back in time. It's like, what the hell's wrong with this game? I'm not playing this anymore. And
it sucked.
I liked a lot of things.
Majora's Mask is really one of the shittiest Zelda games.
Yeah.
It's not the shittiest. I actually think Wind Waker is worse, but
it doesn't have that problem. Wind Waker has good aspect, but like the Skyward Sword, it might be the worst.
Yeah, I never played that one actually. My critical opinion of Zelda is I judge every Zelda by the overworld. Because that's where I have the most fun. That's where it's more sandbox and exploration. I didn't like the overworld in Majora's Mask, and I hated it in Wind Waker.
Yeah, Wind Waker kind of has the worst because it's literally just a giant.
Well, that's also why I hated Twilight Princess. But at the very least, with Wind Waker, they're just islands, and it's like, okay, I understand this. It's pretty liberating once you are allowed to sail from island to island. In Twilight Princess, you're locked completely behind these big shadow walls or something.
Yeah,
and it's like,
you gotta play half the game as a dog. That's not Zelda.
Yeah. Well, it's like more than half the game is dog, and then even more
like the first 3 hours you don't even find a dungeon, and it's like in the first Zelda game you can find the first dungeon in about 3 minutes tops.
Yeah, right. You just go north, and then eventually you'll find a bridge. You follow the bridge, and there you go. You're fighting the dungeon. You fight Aqua Mentis, and if you're like 6 years old, you thought you beat the game, and so you put it away.
Yeah, you're so good. But that was the thing, is that in a way, that first Zelda game, almost the natural instinct in the human mind is to go north from where you start. And it's like, so the game leads you without even leading you. That's part of the genius of the first Zelda game, almost on accident. And then Zelda 2 was like a weird, they were like, didn't really even know what they were doing in a way.
Because it's a different genre. It was that weird era of like NES where it's like, oh, there are no video game franchises, so we'll just do something weird and different every time we make a sequel. So Zelda 2 is going to be this kind of RPG Dragon Quest style thing, and
they're trying to add RPG elements. That's actually where you can kind of see the beginning of the Metroidvania and Castlevania 2. They're adding RPG elements, but they ended up. First off, a lot of them didn't work. There's a bunch of grind. They even had a day-night cycle. That's a really weird thing about
it's bizarre.
Castlevania 2.
Random encounters too.
The day-night cycle it's not like it's a bad idea in Simon's Quest. It's just that stupid dialogue box that takes so long. If they let you skip that, then they would have been fine.
Yeah, that's the problem is they don't let you skip it.
Can do.
And then, of course, it's like you got to grind for like new whips. And it's like, okay, what was this? That's actually one of the things that annoys me about some of the other old Castlevania games, including 3 and 4, which I really like. But then it's like you die, and then you're back to the leather whip, and it's like, great, let me just use save states then. That's how I beat Castlevania 3 for the first time. I had to play it on an emulator.
4 was fantastic. 4 was a game we could actually just rip through and become.
I mean, I love 3 and 4, but I never beat 3 until I got it on an emulator.
3 is fun because it has the branching paths, and you can play as different characters. Like if you want to play as Grant, if you want to do I think that's the easier path if you just play as Grant. But Grant's fun to play because he can climb on the walls and do all sorts of crazy shit.
He can climb on ceilings,
Yeah.
It's like, how much can I break the game with this? I want to crawl underneath the floor and stuff. How can I do that?
That's what I did a lot too.
Yeah, but I think Castlevania 4 was the best game in the
I still prefer Symphony of the Night, though. It's got a leveling system. It's got an inventory. I just prefer stuff like that. I prefer sandboxy and kind of open gameplay systems like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow too. After that,
Portrait of Ruin. Portrait of Ruin, I think, is my favorite.
Yeah.
So Tim makes fun of me because I like Castlevania 4, and so Tim's Asian, so his idea of a fun game is like Ninja Gaiden, one that's so punishingly difficult it breaks your balls. I mean, 4 is maybe an easier Castlevania, but it's fun. It's so fun to be able to whip in 4 directions, to be able to do that weird wiggly shit.
That's
to have full control over Simon, which you don't have.
Spinning the whip around in circles, even for no reason.
That stuff doesn't.
Look at what I can do.
That's the thing that doesn't make sense to me is when people are like, "Oh, I want a game to be really hard," and it's like, I don't think you're really having fun. I think you just want to be able to brag. It's kind of like what was it when Bro Team, when anyone is bragging about their gameplay achievements. And he just yells their baby toys at them.
Yeah, you're bragging about a toy made for babies.
So if a game doesn't need to be super difficult to me to be fun, so I didn't play it back in the day on the NES because I didn't have it and I didn't know anybody who did. But when I got the NES Classic and I played it for the first time a couple years ago, it was Kirby's Adventure on NES, and that game's not hard, but holy shit, it's so fun.
Yeah,
because you experiment, like just eating all the different villains and having all the different powers, and what can I do with these powers? What kind of weird shit? And he's got so many of them, and it's difficult if you want to beat the game at 100%. If you want to find the secret rooms with the switches to open up.
Yeah.
But if you just want to like breeze through the game and plow through it, it's not hard, but that doesn't mean it's not fun.
And games with challenge.
That's the right way. You have to balance it because on the far opposite end of the spectrum is actually BioShock. BioShock 1 and 2, but especially 1. Like I replayed, there's the BioShock 1 remaster, and it's like, oh, I really like this game. And they added the ability to turn off the Vita chambers so that you can't respawn when you die. But you do that, and then you lose all the progress you didn't save, and then it has to reload the game, and it takes forever to load anyway. And it's like, what's the point then? Just fix the thing. And then in BioShock Infinite, they kind of like work around that by costing you money. And it's like, no, this is the wrong way to do this still. Because now the worse you do, the worse you're going to do in the future. And it's like, just give me away.
In the one of the Doom games, like Doom Eternal gives you just 1-ups. And it's like, that's kind of, they maybe should make a comeback then.
Yeah, they're hit. Yeah, that's actually the thing is, in the first place, especially for old Mario games, I hate the system of 1-ups. It's like, what am I doing here? I'm just sitting here waiting for a repeating loop to finish before I can start playing the game again. That's not fun. Meanwhile, with like Nutcase Magenta Kitchen Floor, you die, you tap one button, you don't even have a loading screen. You're back at the beginning. And it's like, okay, I get that.
Right.
If you're going to punish me for
releasing
my progress, games, it better be instantaneous.
Yeah. And
Hotline Miami is like perfect.
Having a limited live system would definitely work for something like BioShock, where it's like there's lives hidden around, so it rewards exploration. Go explore to find the extra lives or whatever, and then you can continue the
Or
game
just
or
you
something without
already have
losing
that system.
progress.
Actually, they have health kits. Just let me carry more than 9.
Yeah, that's
I guess.
essentially what health kits were. They were extra lives essentially that you could just pop at will or whatever. Or like the first Call of Duty game had enemies would drop health kits that you would have to pick up. Sometimes it would mean backtracking, trying to get to one you
Yeah, which is
passed up
why they got
to
rid of it. That was actually a smart move on their on that regard. Call of Duty 2 got rid of health kits and just gave you regenerating health. And I remember when they introduced that,
Well, it keeps
I
the
hated
action
it.
moving.
Yeah, I hated it at first. It's like, oh, where's my health? I can't even see my health bar. This sucks.
Right.
Console
So that's the
command.
other thing too, is that games, they need to. It took a really long time for console gaming, like even back in the day, to realize that they weren't in arcades anymore. They weren't trying to get quarters from people.
They're
So
not trying to drip feed from quarters from you.
so making like Ghosts and Goblins, like, oh, you got to play through the game twice to get the real ending. Ha ha ha! We're gonna get more quarters out of you. Like, that's not fun.
I own the game
Yeah.
already. You have all the quarters from me. You're not going to get more quarters from me.
Yeah.
And now I play it with save states. I'm literally just save scumming my way through the game.
Yeah, I save scum my through because the Super Nintendo one looks like it's a work of art visually, but the game kind of sucks because
game design is constantly evolving. That's one of the things I really love about video games is that they're always updating themselves. They've never stagnated. Video games are always competing with each other.
And you mean patching either.
Yeah, even just with the same game itself, they'll patch it. But even then, it's
not even that. But I've actually played some games that were really good, and then it's like, here we just released this free DLC, or we just like that Walking Dead VR game was like, here's a bunch of content for free that we're just throwing.
The game was already good. Yeah, that game was already good, and it's like, oh, we're going to update it too. And it's like, that's awesome. Another game that I also played. Speaking of the glut or the nadir of Japanese game design was Bayonetta. That was like the big comeback for a lot of Japanese game production was Platinum Games. It's like, here, this is just fun. Here's a game. It's just fun. They made Vanquish. It's a third-person shooter.
Was a great return to form for
it's a third-person cover-based shooter. Everything you describe there makes it sound boring, but then you throw in slow-motion power armor, parkour, and like crazy boss battles, and it's like, oh, this is sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, games aren't hard, like brawlers, 2D beat 'em ups, the Streets of Rage kind of games. But guess what? Everybody's loving is like Streets of Rage 4, and that made it a huge comeback. And there's that new Turtles game coming out, Revenge of the Shredder, which looks amazing.
I want to get that too, especially the poop stuff.
Yeah, River City Girls, and like, those games aren't hard, but holy shit, looking back, they were so much fun. I remember on the NES,
River
like
City
everyone.
Ransom.
Oh, River City Ransom, yeah.
The original games, that game was so fun. Everybody loves that game.
The game's still cool. The first River City Ransom is still fun and cool. It's just such a tiny game once you don't have to use passwords.
Yeah. And same thing with I remember Ninja Turtles Arcade, Ninja Turtles 2 on NES. My brother and I, we got so good at that game. The last time we ever played it when we were teenagers is that we weren't even trying and it wasn't even fun anymore. My brother, I think we're in the sewer level and we're about to fight Leatherhead. My brother was like, Mark, I don't really want to play this anymore. I was like, yeah, me neither. It's not fun.
Because you just got so good at it. Yeah. So many times.
Was that TMNT 2, the arcade game that was on the NES?
Yeah, that one, but
that was awesome. That was an awesome game. But if you play it to death.
But eventually, we played it so much, we just got so good at it. But then the other side of the coin is TMNT 1 on the NES, where you can get through the stupid seaweed level with the dam, and that's fine. But like the Technodrome isn't fun. Navigating those caves isn't fun. Trying to find your way around the airbase isn't fun.
90% of the levels are sewer levels, and the ones that aren't are really just more.
And I also remember that was the thing that
you can't swim.
Angry Video Game Nerd brought up is it was like a one block that was missing from the thing. He's trying to jump over it. I remember that distinctly. And it's like, oh, somebody else actually brought that up. I didn't think I never
walk over it.
I'd see that. You just walk over it. He's just so pissed off. Which is
exactly pissed off finding out to do that.
Right, you're not just walk over it. It's messing with your head. It's just there. It's a psychological game. You don't have to jump over it. There is no sweet spot. You just walk over it. Like the game is trolling
if you jump over it, it would stop you in midair and fall you into the
because it's right
ground
at the
and die.
ceiling. Yeah, that was infuriating.
Yeah,
that one,
that's
it's almost
not
like
fun.
I can't get mad at them for that one thing, because like you bastards, you magnificent bastards, you really trolled me with that one.
But it was
The rest
also
of the
like
game,
they
it's not like the rest of the
figured that
game
you
was
would
really
think to
fun.
do that because of the Mario games, because the Mario games would let you sort of skip
yeah,
hop
you
over
had to be
single
running.
block
You had to
gaps.
be running at full speed.
Yeah, which you couldn't
TMNT
do
1.
in the TMNT
Yeah, there was
game.
no running.
yeah. But I mean, the rest of that TMNT game though, like you get to the Technodrome and there's like 50 characters on the screen. They're all shooting at you at the same time, and you can't dodge everything. Like that's like the Technodrome's not fun. I remember just never enjoying getting that far in the game.
But at least it wasn't Battletoads.
Oh god, Battletoads. Yeah, what Battletoads actually is fun until it has that difficulty.
It's fun for the
like,
first
spike.
10 levels, and then
Yeah, then you
50
get
levels
to
later.
the stupid what is it that you're on? You're on like a hover bike and you're in a tunnel, the turbo tunnel.
Yeah.
And yeah, once you get to that, like the game is just
No,
wow.
I never.
Just
The
suddenly
game's just a giant middle finger in your face at
Yeah.
that point.
That
That's
was the
the
first
third
time.
level or something.
That was the first time that I ever like fell for hype. But I mean, yeah, Battletoads.
Well, I mean, Battletoads had a lot of really cool, weird,
great
interesting
ideas.
It was like
Battletoads was a bunch of great ideas, but it was kind of hampered by like I think they want to do something different every single level, and the result is that each level is completely different, but they're also you're tired of them by the time. I never even got to the turbo tunnel legitimately. I got to the very, very last spike track in the sewer
third level
pipes.
with a hover bike, but there was another hover bike in like level 17 or some shit.
Yeah, there's like
there's a big wheel after that.
Which never. Once I got to that, the controls stopped working, and I don't know. I still to this day don't know why.
So here's the thing that kind of proves that the big wheel level was bullshit all along, is that it requires timing to within a fraction of a second in order to beat it. And if you try to play that on a modern flat screen TV, on an HD TV, there's a half-second lag. So that level is actually unbeatable if you hook your NES up to an HD TV. But that's not fun if the only way to beat the level is with half-second timing, or otherwise you die.
Which is, that's also what all the levels at that point required half-second timing.
You know what really disappointed me also about the game is the very first level, they could have dragged that out for multiple, like, you fight a robot, you fight the pig monsters, then you fight a dragon, then you can knock the dragon to the ground, ride on the dragon with the stick, the robot leg, and breathe fire while hitting people like it's Joust. And it's like, this could have been 5 levels by itself.
I would have loved that. And then you go straight to a fucking like bungee cord level where you're trying to go down like a pit.
Yeah. Which like, that one's cool too, but it would be cool as a side level after other levels.
And then you go to the turbo tunnel, and it's like, oh, I want to go back to what the first level was. That was fun.
By that point, it's like, okay, are we going to go back to that? But the combat system was way simplified, so that you can't even do that many moves against the enemies in the tunnel at that point.
Yeah,
it's like,
the first level is all about doing these bizarre different moves, and then the rest of the game they just take that away from you, and it's just jumping puzzles over spike pits.
I would have appreciated if they kind of done those in a loop, like a cycle. Like 1, 2, 3, then you go back to the gameplay of the first level, a full-fledged combat system, more dragon riding and jousting on a dragon and breathing fire and stuff like that. I would have really appreciated, especially if they'd done that with the other levels. It's like, here's a little bit of the ice level, here's a little bit of the riding the snakes level, and then you'll come back and do that again later when it's harder.
Yeah, instead they drag out all of those levels, so it's like 10 levels worth of just this. It's jumping puzzles where you have to do rote memorization of where each pit is,
which is
if you forget, then you die.
And Corona like a Mario Maker level where someone does it like an insane thing, on Mario Maker, and you watch like a YouTube video of someone beating it, and you're like, oh wow, clap, clap, clap. Like, but that wouldn't be fun to play, would it?
No, that's if you watch the Donkey videos. Times. Donkey actually does those where he's like playing them. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the best, and then he dies, and it's like, that didn't happen. There was a glitch.
Didn't count. That one didn't count.
I mean, yeah, Doug's videos are funny because he just does a super cut of the 10,000 times he died, and then the one time he finally beat it. Like that's like triumphant. But me playing that, I'd be like, nah, fuck that. That's not fun.
that's not fun to me. I don't think it's fun to anyone.
Well, the idea of getting accomplishment out of that, it's like you are essentially getting accomplishment out of a baby toy that doesn't actually give you real accomplishment.
If that does,
it tricks you into thinking you have a sense of accomplishment.
I understand delayed gratification. I mean, it's good to be able to get enjoyment from delayed gratification. The problem is when you delay it so much and then the gratification is so little, it becomes less and less the longer it takes.
Yeah, and you realize how artificial it is. A lot of gratification from beating a difficult game is fake. It doesn't actually exist at all. And a lot of people genuinely convince themselves into thinking it's real and not understanding why you don't care. They're like, why would you not want to play?
You didn't grind all 8,000 levels.
You get so much achievement out of finishing. It's
why didn't you get to level 8,200 in Shin Megami Tensei? It's like, I'm not playing that.
Yeah, no.
So I don't have a modern video game system. And it isn't because I don't want one or that I don't think the games will be fun.
I'm skipping all the generations until they come out with something that's so necessary. And to be honest, the Steam Deck is really the only console I really want, which is just a PC.
Yeah, it's like if I really want to play Breath of the Wild, but I also know that if I sit down and I play Breath of the Wild, that's time that I'll never get back to write Common America scripts or Black Ops scripts or do productive things, and that'll just end up being a huge time sink. Yeah, I'll be having fun, but I won't be accomplishing anything. So it's like when you watch a movie, right? That's 90 minutes. So I mean, I'm writing I feel like taking a 90-minute break.
Yeah.
And then you watch a movie, it ends, you go back to work. Video games, that could go on all night. It just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and then you haven't even started at the end of when the sun's coming back up, and it's like, I've only done 2% of the whole game so far.
That's me with like Skyrim and Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, especially Skyrim. I got Skyrim VR, and it's like, oh, Skyrim, I'll play Skyrim again, but it'll be in VR. And next thing I know, 5 hours have passed. I've barely done anything in the game, and it's like, holy shit.
I was chopping people in half left and right, though, but it's like, oh, I forgot to go this way. I need to dump all my stuff that I picked up.
I forgot to eat. I got the shakes now because I didn't eat.
Yeah.
That's how all those South Korean kids keep dying, because they just sit there with like a case of Red Bulls and they forget to eat for 2 days and they drop dead.
Yeah, Red Bull isn't food, but
I don't know if they're even forgetting or if they're just putting it off because like I don't need to eat for 2 whole days, and then they just die. I don't need to sleep.
StarCraft has claimed more Korean lives in the Korean War, I think.
More Koreans have died than Zerglings at this point.
Well, speaking of not eating, maybe we should wrap this up and go back to food life.
I gotta at least drink. Jeez, let me at least get
boosted. Here though, it's always good to just hang out and do a stream. That's really all. I was like, oh, we could talk about I was thinking of talking about like the idea of shared universes, and then I was planning to bring up the subject as soon as Doug left. It was like, oh, you know what? Let me get into this.
Then we talked about video games instead and lost track of time.
Because I like video games. If I could, I'd make video games, but I don't know how to code.
I would genuinely love to be in video games. The thing is, I make comics because I was going to just not make comics, and I ended up making comics despite myself.
Well, I mean, we've been making comics. That's the truth is we've been making comics. It's just that we never thought, because it's like
I've never tried.
These will never be a Marvel or DC or.
Yeah, I've never tried selling. I've never thought about selling them for years and years. I just never even thought about selling them.
I didn't think it was possible.
And I didn't try to promote them or any of that shit. I would send them around and I would post them somewhere. But I was like, I'm just doing this for fun. And it's like, does that even count when you're just doing it for fun for yourself? If you're just doing scribbly doodles and stuff for yourself?
It's practice, though. And that's the thing is if you want to be good enough for someone to pay you for your writing or your art, well, then you have to do it for free, kind of, even if you're just doing it on your own time, is practicing. I mean, geez, I wrote, like, for my website, I wrote stories, I wrote all these unpublished drafts for Tim for 10 years before I finally wrote something good enough for us to be like, okay, let's see if anyone will buy this shit. So you've got to practice.
Yeah, that's what a lot of that feels like, building up to the stuff that we are doing now, which is a good thing, actually. So that's why I do feel good that
I also think
all that stuff I was making was
writers
at least forced on purpose.
Writers have a tougher break, especially if you don't want to just write novels, which I don't. What am I going to do? Get published in some airport bookshelf?
Yeah,
I don't
but I
want to
mean,
do
even
that.
if I wanted to do that, I
want to make comics.
Do it really.
I want to be able to make comics, but the thing is, I can't draw. So it's just like, oh, you're expected. That's the thing that always kind of annoys me about artists. Seeing all these artists who is like, oh, if somebody's expecting you to draw something for free, you should call them out and report them and make sure that everybody knows that they're trying to steal your work from you, because it's very wrong. And it's like, what if I'm a writer and I'm trying to get noticed making comics? And it's like, well, then you should just also learn to draw. And it's like, it's two different skills.
Eric Larson says that all the time, but he hates writers. He's the guy who wrote that letter to the Comics Journal and Name Withheld, where he's like, writers have no place in comics, blah, blah, blah. He's got some sort of like bug up his ass about it. But that's always what he says.
Yeah, it's a very Eric Larson-y take. And of course, it's a very fan take. And it's a very American comic book fan take.
It's a shame because I always thought that the Wild Side, the Other Side, those are really nice single panel gags.
Eric Larson. No, that's a different.
Oh, that's God, I'm sorry. Something Larson.
I cannot think. Side. First of all, I can't think of anything.
The Far Side.
Yeah, the Far Side by something Larson.
Gary Larson.
Thank you, Gary Larson.
Okay, so it's not the same person. So then,
no.
Focus. Eric Larson
goes
go to
Savage Dragon for Image.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. I know, but he hates writers. He's almost. Well, I think the only person who hates writers more than him is the Ren and Stimpy guy, John Kirk-Falusi.
Well, there's a lot of other people in American comics who also hate writers. Yeah. A lot of them are also supposedly creators, but not doing a very good job lately.
If you hate writers. If you hate writers and you work in any creative field, you're bad at what you do. I don't care. Yeah. Ren and Stimpy is just a low-rent version of either Beavis and Butthead or Rocko's Modern Life.
Yeah, if you're doing like a 5-minute short that's just supposed to be slapstick and visually funny, then yeah, maybe you don't need a writer. But if you want to do anything more ambitious with the plot, ongoing story arcs, character development, world building, then yeah, you do need a script. And
well, ultimately, you are still being a writer if you're putting down even a series of images in sequence.
How do they not
writing?
How do they not understand that? And I'll also be honest, I couldn't really stand Ren and Stimpy. You know, I was like, oh, this is gag's kind of funny.
Yeah, I would see like clips of Ren and Stimpy and little bits of it and be like, this is this is funny and all, but ultimately, I prefer something like Rocko's Modern Life.
The weird thing is these guys have the opinion that like Batman the Animated Series would be better without Paul Dini and Michael Reeves and all the script writers who wrote like Heart of Ice and all those wonderful stories with really deep characterization. Like, no, it would just be better if it was just Bruce Timm and it was just nothing but storyboards straight to animation of just Batman punching people.
Throwing visuals.
There's no way that.
Or like the Critic or the Simpsons or so many other things that clearly
powered by writers.
Being written.
Basically everything. There's also that somebody who drew a comic basically, and it was like the difference between the artist for Batman, the original artist for the original Batman versus the writer. I forget who was. Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Yeah, Bob Kane his name is Batman, and he's this guy in a domino mask who has wings, and he swings in a rope. And Bill Finger's like the Batcave, the Batmobile, Robin, Alfred, and all the narrative stuff. Gotham City. Yeah.
All the real meat of the character, the backing,
the stuff that people actually know Batman for.
It's shocking to think in this day and age anyone would ever say anything along the line, just denigrating writers like that. Well, again, writers really do have a much harder time.
Like Eric Larson doesn't really know how to make a good story or anything.
I've never heard of anything. I've heard of Savage Dragon. I've never heard anyone say anything good about it. Never seen anyone share a page from it saying, "Oh, look at this. This is great." never seen anyone talk about it.
I mean, it still exists because the guy basically owns the company. If it wasn't for that, he would have fired himself.
He's absolutely Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
Well, so Image Comics was founded exclusively by artists, all of which who left Marvel and DC because they didn't like working with writers. And when they first started, Image is like, this is going to be the comic book publisher for artists. No writers allowed, no icky writers. And within like 6 months, they were hiring Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison and Frank Miller, all the superstar writers, to write their comics for them because they couldn't hit their deadlines. They couldn't tell their stories. They didn't know how to write a comic.
Yeah, and to think that people still haven't learned that lesson. A bunch of people, even these supposed indie comics people who are really just corporate infiltrators. They're corporate comics people who do corporate comics and have all their lives and are trying to claim.
Image was actually kind of coasting on basically just Todd McFarlane at that point. Spawn and I know Liefeld made a bunch of money too, but Spawn comics, the toy line and the movie are basically the thing that kept Image afloat for the most part. And a lot of that.
If it wasn't for that, it absolutely would have folded. They would have gone bankrupt. They would have collapsed. They would be gone. Yeah. And in fact, if it wasn't for like Walking Dead and even Saga, as much as Saga is like, kind of a train wreck, it still got enough readers. It got people looking for something new. They were like, I want to see something in American comics that's unique, that isn't just the same old shit. And that's why most people left to just read manga. And that's where a lot of that, I mean, we were saying directly to people on stream in 2018, most readers in America are reading manga because that's where they're getting their fix for actual good storytelling. That's
they're reading. They're reading comics. They're reading webcomics. They're reading manga. They're not reading stories.
Their writing has to compete. You can't just have good art because in Japan, all of the art's good. So you got to have something else to draw people in. Like
it's got to be a weird. You have to have a hook.
Got canceled because they were boring.
And that's the funny thing is that when it comes to, even if it's an established genre in manga, there has to be a hook to it. It has to be like, it's this, but
and not just X meets Y, but it's like, it's this, it's X, if you will, it's X, but instead of just X, it's also
it's an isekai.
Go this way instead.
They have like a genre definition for like somebody who is transported to an RPG fantasy world. Yeah, and that was the uncle one, the one where the uncle comes back from the fantasy world and he's just trying to share his stories with his like real life cousin or nephew that he's living with now.
Right. I mean, they have funny ones too. It's like, it's isekai, but you're a slime. It's isekai, but you're Yamcha from Dragon Ball Z. Something like that. There's always a but to it. They're like slice of life stuff about high school girls who are in an after school club.
It's the new twist on X.
Yeah, it's a twist. There's an entire genre of slice of life stuff that's just about girls in high school in an after school club. And there's always a but to it. Like, it's slice of life, but they go camping. It's slice of life, but they're in a band. It's slice of life, but they play board games. It's slice of life, but they're witches because it's Little Witch Academia.
It's got to have a strong concept too. They know how to do that. They, really glue a concept onto the core conceit of the show, slice of life. They do a really good slice of life too. America doesn't seem to get it.
That's what I was trying to point out all those years ago. And it was funny because the same people back then who were just straight up saying that was wrong, are now saying, oh yeah, that's totally true.
Who was one of those people?
He discovered it or something.
Nick Beta Ricada was one of those people.
Yeah, he actually got mad about that. It was weird. But
you explained it because he had no idea. He has no idea. But it was like, hey, webcomics, they're bigger than
before
American
he pretended to like anime. This was back when he was actually telling me in person, over the internet in person, I guess. But he was telling me he didn't really watch anime and didn't know anything about it. This was before the whole fake ploy of being into anime. But anyway,
yeah, he had to pretend to be into anime because his money was like tied up in pretending to be into anime.
Which is now a big business, is pretending to like things to sucker in people. But didn't we say we were going to wrap up the stream?
Oh yeah, I know. We got started on another good topic, so we got to do another stream. So let me know. And
you know what? Next we should just have you on again, like next week or something, to actually talk about.
Yeah, man, I'd love to come on. Just make sure to put a pin in this conversation so we can have it next week.
Yeah, you know, we'll talk about the manga stuff, because we've done a lot of videos about what manga does right years ago. And the thing is, those are just old in the archives now and stuff. But it's worth digging into because it's still true. It's just as true as when we were the first people to ever.
Yeah, but now you get to talk about it with me. So
yeah, exactly.
That's the but. It's the Royal-ups talking about manga, but Mark is there.
It's the X meets Y. But
it's you guys
and also I wanted to go into the topic of shared universes too, because we were going to talk about that.
Yeah, okay, we got to talk about that too.
Yeah, so next time,
write that down.
Next week on this channel, we'll do another one. I might ask Doug to see if he can come back on. Maybe I'll ask Tim, see if he can come on. I usually ask a bunch of people to see if they can.
Yeah, I think Tim's actually on vacation this week, and that's the only reason why he didn't make it. Yeah. He's at the beach.
He's at the beach, apparently. He's enjoying it. He's enjoying himself, but apparently still working. So
yeah, he brought his tablet to
be able to go to the beach and still work at the beach, which makes sense. But anyways, yeah. So once again, Tim and Mark's one of their favorite comics of all time in history
is literally.
The sequel is crowdfunding right now, needs money to get made. It's not like other people who either have the book finished and are just taking sales, or are taking the money and still haven't finished their books, which those are strange flavors of crowdfunding. We are the original intent for crowdfunding, which is to get the money to make the thing. So check out the link below to fund us. Tim and Mark have well, I mean, I don't think Tim or you donated yet, but there is still an entire month. I think maybe you're waiting or something.
I'll put us on the spot. Why don't you?
Not for the last minute, but but I mean, there's still perks and stuff for the for credits page for if anyone wants that sort of thing. But essentially, what you're buying if you fund our comic is you're buying the comic. That's pretty much just the straightforward thing, at least.
And we
just a transaction.
Yeah, it's just straight up a transaction. So yeah, donate to that. You know, check out Common America if you haven't seen that yet, of course. But most people have, of course. They should. We've been hyping Common America for a long time, going back since not only that, but before Common America. Somebody looked this up, and they actually found the really old streams before Common America existed of all of us on together. And like Tim was talking about how you were coming up with a new superhero comic idea that ended up being Common America. And Tim was like, you know, we watch your videos and we see the stuff you're talking about and how we can do things, you know, differently than what the other stuff. And it's like, yeah, you know what? It's interesting. So
they're all good. Listen, all this wisdom that's just.
Those are on the Bunderdome. That's on the Bunderdome channel too. If you go back far enough, it's a bunch of old streams with us.
Yeah, we got some spicy shit in the Bunderdome archives.
Yeah, the hidden lore, the stuff you're not supposed to be hearing. Also, there's a new channel specifically for King Wolf Comics, you know, which is what puts out Literally and the other comics that we make. That's linked below.
Yeah, that should be the comic that I'm getting made. It's actually really close. I mean,
yeah, that's right. My brother's putting out
more months. There's no time limit because I mean, you know, it's
yeah.
Well, I'm not taking people's money anyway, but I definitely don't want to be like that where it's like, oh, we're going to be releasing this comic in 1.5 years. And just have no plans for actually meeting that goal.
Ideally this year, but anyways, yeah. So that there'll be that. So
I mean, it should be soon, actually.
Yeah, we all have comics coming out and to be launched and that kind of thing.
I want to be able to make more comics too. That's the thing is, I don't want to just make a comic and then be like, there, I made a comic. I don't have to make
in
any
order
more
to
comics.
do that, though, we do need more support, at least for either funding the art.
That's
or,
one of the things also I
artists.
used to say when we were when we be shilling for our Patreon or whatever the hell our Kickfund Me crowdfund website. It's like you're paying to keep the lights on.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, I know pirating saves you money, but if you want to see more of something you love, it always is a good idea to
That's
buy
why.
it.
Yeah,
That's what we
That's
do.
why I always pay. I could like Tim tells me like you don't even have to back our thing. I could just send it to you. He says this to us specifically.
Yeah, every single time he's like, "Oh, I'm going to send you the comic anyway." And it's like, yeah, but we want to pay for it.
Yeah, I want to support it and I want to see it grow. So I can shell out $16, $10 for a physical with $6 shipping. That should be no problem to anyone. So yeah, if you want to see more of actual good stuff, you should fund that. And no funding. Don't fund the people who are giving you false promises and just selling you hype and stuff. You should fund the actual comics and the actual work.
At the very least, do a little bit of research. Look into it. Find out what they're saying about who they're saying.
Yeah. So and actually hold people to standards. That's kind of important too. So yeah, therefore the only choice you have is to back stuff like Common America and the stuff that the Common America people enjoy, which is our comics.
You got very few options. At the very least, hey, it saves you some money because you have very limited options when it comes to backing good crowdfunded independent comics.
Yeah, so check out all that stuff. Check out the stuff linked below. The King Wolf Comics channel, I don't think is linked below, but I can link to that later. But
you should do that.
Yeah, everyone subscribe to that because it needs at least 100 subscribers for a nice custom URL. And enjoy. We'll do another stream ideally soon, maybe next week. Sure to listen to Shitty Web Comics.